Hello, and welcome back to TNN's coverage of the world's 9 best fantasy football players league. I'm Danny Football, and this is what we have for you this week. It's now championship week, and we have a matchup between McKiss Smaballs and Court is now in session. Rematch from last year's championship game. TNN reached out to both teams to see how they were approaching the championship.
Well, Court's back in the championship, exactly where we wanted to be. I think this was pretty expected when you put together a great roster. You expect to be in the championship, and frankly, we lived up to expectations this year. I think the boys are going to put in a great performance this week against McKiss. They have the best of us 2 times this year, which is not great, but I think it's going to provide a little fuel to that fire. So we know the Court, very motivated team. They want to really prove themselves, prove that this is a dynasty, win back to back, something very hard to do in fantasy football and in the NFL. So really want to get that win, get the nice prize attached to that, and I'm just gonna say it. I'm hoping for a lot of sacks. Baker Mayfield, T.J. Watt is gonna be all over you Monday night. I think it's gonna be a great way to end the season with a nice sack from T.J. Watt. Just really, driving the point home there. Nice sack, T.J. Watt. You heard it here first. I'm thinking 30 points. 30-point performance from T.J. Watt. Take home the championship. And if he does that, I might just rename my team after him for next year.
This week also has the toilet bowl between Team M. Vanek and Team Big Chungus 22. TNN reached out to see how these two teams were feeling about the matchup this week.
I wouldn't go in there for a couple days or weeks.
Please, somebody put me out of my misery. Have mercy on my soul.
Trust the process.
And now, here is Danny Football with his picks for Week 17. Hey, what's up, guys? World's 9 best fantasy football players expert, Danny Football here, back with another week of expert predictions. Last week was pretty good for me, going 4-2, bringing my total on the year up to a very nice 57-37. My guest, Brett, was not able to beat the expert, going 2-4, and I've now been able to redeem myself against all my guests on the show this year except for one. Now, it's a new week, there's a new guest, and a new chance to beat the expert, the last obstacle between me and beating every guest this season. So guest, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Mwahaha. Hey, what's up, guys? It's the owner of soon-to-be toilet bowl champion Team M. Vanek. It is good to see you again, my friend, Mr. Football. As you may have mentioned before, I am 3-0 against you so far. A lot of people have started to call me Mikey Football, which, it's kind of so accurate so far. And I'm looking forward to going 4-0 here. So thanks for having me back on the show, and I'm looking forward to it.
Of course, had to have you back. It's a big chance for me to beat all members of the league this year. Not something that I want to pass up on, of course. All right, we're going to start off with the Mental Brick Walls and the Tex Arcana Bandits. Bandits favored in this one at 85%. Mike Vanek, who do you like in this matchup?
Let me consult my extensive notes. Actually, I didn't write very many notes for this matchup, but I like the Bandits in this one. I'm still bitter from the trade last year with the Bandits when they stole CD Lamb from me and my first round pick. But I do think that they have a really good team in the future. They have a very young team. They have a lot of good young wide receivers. Brett did come through against Team Empanic last year with the star-studded performance of Ian Book on Monday Night Football. But I don't think that it's going to carry through again to this week. And I think that the Texarkana Bandits are going to come through for 9th place. I'm going to go with the Bandits on this one.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good pick here. This is, it's a very meaningless 9th place game, aside from giving one of these teams a nice moral victory heading into next season. As was mentioned on the show last week, I feel like we're being robbed by not having this matchup in the Toilet Bowl. Brick Walls and the Bandits. I don't think it's too arguable to say that they were the two worst teams in the league this year. Really, it should have been the Toilet Bowl matchup, but
Agreed.
They managed to pick up a win, so good for them, For the Brick Walls, they might have to turn back to Trevor Lawrence this week, who's projected a nice 11 points, which might be the lowest I've ever seen for a starting quarterback in this league. I have a sneaking suspicion that this team may be looking for another quarterback in next year's draft. And I think the other teams may be a little gun shy after Trevor Lawrence went in the first round and has not really worked out. So Brick Walls might be able to get a decent quarterback even after waiting a little bit in the draft. For the Bandits, I think they're officially back. Rex Burkhead is probably RB1 on this team right now, which is certainly an interesting sentence to say. A.J. Brown is back, and the combination of him, CD, Justin Jefferson is going to be a force for the foreseeable future. If they could figure a way out of their terrible running back situation, I might like this team even more. And fans of the show will know that I'm high on the Bandits. So saying that I like this team even more, that's a pretty high bar right there. I think the Bandits, they're going to create a little momentum going into next year, and I'm going with them in this one. Next up, we have Bonk Go To Mahorny Jail versus Blinded by the Tight End. Bonk favored here at 97%. Big blowout projected by Sleeper. This one, I think it's going to get a little closer in the projections with Blinded by the Tight End having a few COVID issues in their starting lineup. It's a very interesting third place game here, and I'm intrigued to see what kind of tanking considerations these two owners have as they try to position themselves for the draft. Bonk, they already secured their buy-in back after winning the Imposters division, so they don't need to win this game in order to break even. They can instead focus on draft positioning. But Blinded by the Tight End was in the same spot last year in this third place game. Chose to tank for the better draft pick. So who knows what's going to happen. For the sake of this pick, though, I'm going to assume that both of them are operating at full strength, but that is definitely not necessarily what is going to happen here. With that being said, Bonk, clearly the better team. They put a good scare on the court last week, and this might be a hot take, but Jalen Waddle may be the best fantasy wide receiver taken in that rookie draft last year. The man just has insane volume. I know there's some that might point to Jamar Chase or Devontae, both good options, but really just that volume out of Waddle. I think he could pull away and really solidify himself as a top tier wideout next year. Bonk, they genuinely surprised me this year. I did not think they were going to do as well as they did, and I think they're going to be in a very good spot for next year. For Blinded by the Tight Ends, they had a really rough year with Calvin Ridley and Derrick Henry both being out. Plus, they had James Robinson, who was being held back by just an absolutely atrocious Jags offense all year. Hashtag fire Urban Meyer. Finally did it. Freed James Robinson only for him to get hurt very soon after. So here's hoping for a bounce back for him. I was pretty down on Blinded by the Tight End all year, often stating that they are frauds, very fraudulent record, but I think that they have plenty of pieces in place to really compete in the future. Just got to work on their offensive depth a bit. I'm going to say watch out for these two teams next year, but the better team right now is Bonk, and I'm going with them in this one.
I agree. I think that's a good pick. I actually didn't think that Blinded by the Tight End was that much of a fraudulent team this year. I think going into the season, they had one of the best teams and just had really bad luck. Like you said, with Calvin Ridley, with Derrick Henry. And even like halfway through the year, I think they had a lot of potential. I was always scared to play them. But then again, Team Vanek isn't scared to play anyone. But I do think that they have a good team kind of through and through. But yeah, like you said, they have a lot of COVID issues this week. I'm sure Tom will change the lineup, but I think he has 3 starting players right now with COVID, which does make you wonder, is he going for the tank? Is he not? Time will tell. But like assuming that they both do play for full strength, I think that Bonk is going to come through. I think that Cooper Kupp is pretty much just unstoppable right now. And yeah, like you said, Jalen Waddle just gets a million catches every game. And Patrick Mahomes is playing a lot better now. So I think that unfortunately for Bonk, he's not in the championship, but I think that his team is coming together at the right time. And I think that if he decides to go full strength, he's going to beat Tom pretty handedly.
Moving on, we have the Toilet Bowl. Team Big Chungus 22 versus Team M Vanek. Big Chungus currently favored at 60% in this one. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
As the owner of Team M Vanek, I'm very disheartened to be in this matchup. I knew going into the year that it was going to be a bad year for me with trading away Dalvin Cook. And I was really hopeful for the future. But it was all in the name of trusting the process. And I'm still kind of holding true to that. Even if this year didn't work out for me, there's always the next few years, which is when Team Panic is going to really shine. But for this specific matchup, I got to go Team Vanek. I think that even with some COVID issues, the boys are going to pull through. They know that this is not a game of any draft pick or glory, but it's just it's pure grit and for some respect. And I think that they're going to show up because of that. Team Big Chungus, I think, is pretty bad. Like they deserve to be in here almost as much as Team Vanek does. And I think that I don't even know who's on their team. I barely even looked. They're never even talked about on the show, which I think is completely warranted. Like they're just there. It's just Team Big Chungus and nobody cares about them. I think that creates some low morale in the locker room, especially with him not even starting Russell Wilson anymore, which I'm still spiteful of him taking him the pick before me. But anyway, I do think that Team Big Chungus, and I'm not just saying this as the owner of Team Vanek, I do think Team Big Chungus has the worst team in this matchup and deserves to be the Toilet Bowl loser or champion, whatever the loser of the Toilet Bowl is called. But I think they're going to take last place in the league, and I think I'm going to go with Team Vanek.
Yeah, I like that. That's some pretty good analysis there. This is a matchup I'm really intrigued by. Battle of the two nameless teams. Some may say that's the reason that they're in this matchup. Some may also say this is a surprising toilet bowl matchup. You might think that looking at the records of these two teams, but fans of the show will know that I have been very low on both of these teams all year, and this matchup was really not a surprise to this expert at all. We're going to start with the Chunguses. I haven't had too much to say about this team all year. And that's because there really just isn't too much to say. This team just isn't good enough to get into the playoffs, and they don't provide me or the editors of this show with any interesting storylines to really feature them in. If this were a reality TV show, Team Big Chungus would be that contestant you see walking around in the background sometimes, and you just completely forget about them right up until that episode where they get a ton of attention because they're right about to get booted from the show. This is that episode right now. I'm going to give Team Big Chungus 22 a lot of attention. First off, Miles Sanders, probably a bust. I mean, the man just has so many injury concerns. At best, he cannot be considered a safe starting option in any starting lineup. Also, despite claims otherwise, Julio Jones is not, quote, still super elite. The man really should be nowhere near starting lineups. He's not even the best receiver on his own team. And when Derrick Henry comes back, they're just going to run the ball and lower Julio Jones' value even more. Team Big Chungus traded away Justin Jefferson and a pick for DeAndre Swift. And I guess they'll be hoping and praying that he doesn't go the way of other promising Lions running backs lately. Cough, cough, Kerryon Johnson. What's he up to these days? I don't know. But he had a lot of promise. DeAndre Swift, a lot of promise. I don't know. I don't love the trade. I'm going to say it. I do not love the trade. This team also, they desperately needed some defensive help, and Bonk swooped in last year, stole Micah Parsons right ahead of them last year's draft. Micah Parsons has been one of the best IDP players in the league this year. Could have been part of the Chunguses, but Chunguses, they sat on their feet, let Bonk jump in front of them. They settled for Michael Carter, who I'd like to point out plays for the Jets. They've got the Mond Goblin. He's taken a very nice role as the Vikings' third string quarterback this year. Complete waste of a rookie draft pick. Oh, and their starting defensive linemen have 15 and a half sacks combined this year, which is less than Robert Quinn, who all Bears fans had hated, deeply hated before this year. Just came out of absolutely nowhere to put up those numbers. So congrats to the Chunguses. Their two defensive linemen are worse combined than Robert Quinn. Just very questionable leadership. Not a lot of promise on this roster. Really does not make for a very enticing pick in any matchup aside from picking them to take home the toilet bowl, of course. But, there's also Team Vanek in this matchup. There's not a lot of good to say about Team Vanek. I'm gonna borrow a line from my mortal enemy, Mike Visconti, and point out that this team will never be good enough to win, nor will they be bad enough to properly tank, and forever probably be trapped in about 500 purgatory. Luckily for them, they have those 3 first-round picks to help dig them out of this spot, but this upcoming draft is considered to be a particularly weak draft class, so who knows how valuable those picks are actually going to be. They also don't even fully utilize their taxi squad, which is just a missed opportunity for this team to develop some talent. Empty spots on the taxi squad really makes you question team leadership there. This team, they're checked out. They left 3 players in their starting lineup last week who put up 0 points. I'm going to excuse the Marquez Valdez-Scantling situation, but both James Conner and Jamison Crowder were ruled out before game time and still left in the lineup. Really makes you wonder if this team wants to take home the toilet bowl. Unfortunately, I have to pick.
Might as well be last.
I unfortunately have to pick one of these teams. I really hate to do it, but I think the choice here is pretty clear. I'm going to go with the Chunguses.
Boo. That's when you voice in the boo thing. Yeah.
No.
The
That's the kids cheering. That's the yay.
show. That's
Everyone
the
agrees
boo.
with that pick. Finally, we have our marquee matchup of the week. The championship game. Court is now in session versus McKiss Balls. Court favorite at 87% chance to win. This is the championship match 2 years in a row now. Court taking it home last year, but McKiss has had the upper hand this year, winning both of their matchups with Court. Look, we all know these two teams were the two best teams in the league. It's just a question of whether or not they were going to get there in the championship. This is basically the Alabama, Georgia equivalent of the world's 9 best. We don't need to do this whole thing called the regular season. These two teams were going to face off. And, we can probably skip the regular season next year too, because both of these teams are going to be back in the playoffs. They're both built very well for the future. One thing to look out for McKiss here is they've got a lot of issues at the linebacker spot. A whole lot of COVID cases, some injuries. They've turned to Jonas Griffith, who apparently plays for the Broncos. He's had some good numbers recently, but it's a little bit of a small sample size. And personally, if I had a team in this league, I would be a little bit worried about rolling him out there in such a big matchup. They also are likely to be without Mike Evans, who's a big deadline pickup for them. Injury concern, plus the COVID. I'd be very surprised if he made it out there for week 17. But really, this is a team that's loaded from top to bottom, and I'm sure they're going to put up a big score this week. For the Court, they've largely avoided COVID issues, although their defense is a little banged up. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, also an injury to watch, so they're going to have to come up with a plan if he can't go this week. One thing I really like, this is going to be very fun for this championship matchup, something fun to look out for. McKiss currently has no players currently in their starting lineup who will be playing on Sunday or Monday night, whereas the Court has 7 players in their lineup playing on Sunday or Monday night. So, it's McKiss is going to know where they stand pretty early, and the Court, we're going to have to see if they can charge back and come through late. Most importantly is the Steelers-Browns game on Monday night with big players like Chubb, Deontay Johnson, and the IDP cheat code himself, TJ Watt. TJ has scored a combined 2 points in the 2 matchups between the Court and McKiss this year. Clearly, Nooch is working some voodoo magic on Commissioner Tooch's team. I don't know how TJ's put up 2 points over 2 weeks combined. He's going to need to do more than that if the Court wants to have any chance this week. And he just might against Baker and the Browns. I think this one ends up being really close. Both of these teams are really good. Expect them to be really good for the foreseeable future. I'm going to give the edge to the Court. Repeat champs. Lock it in.
Boo. 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 Yeah, I'm going to go with McKiss in this one. First off, congrats to both the teams. They were very clearly the 2 best teams in the league all throughout the year, and there's really no denying that, however much I am resentful of them both being so good both years and this being the championship both years. But yeah, they were both of your teams are extremely good through and through.
Oh, it's not my team.
That's true. Sorry, Danny Football. Commissioner Tooch's team, which, a lot of people are shaking their heads about Commissioner Tooch being the championship 2 years in a row, but that's for a different day. But yeah, they're both very good. Court has had a lot of issues lately in the tight end position. All 3 of their tight ends on IR this week, so they have to settle for Austin Hooper, is it? Tight end of the Browns, is it? Getting thrown to by Baker Mayfield? Yeah, no. So that's pretty much that's going to be a low score coming in the tight end position versus Kyle Pitts, which is also it's going to be a pretty lopsided matchup. But anyway, I think Court is very good. Rodgers has obviously been elite for Court this year, very reliable quarterback. And then, like you said, the cheat code TJ Watt, putting up consistently above 30 a game multiple times this year. And I think a large part of this matchup will come down to how well TJ Watt plays and just defense in general, how many sacks they get. But McKiss on the other side, Jonathan Taylor has been another absolute cheat code this year. Just a phenomenal player. Since he's so young, he's going to be so good for so long, which makes me really upset. But I think additionally, Aaron Donald, a lot of this matchup is going to come down to how well Donald plays. He hasn't had that good of a year, I think. I haven't really been following him, but I think if he can get a couple sacks in this matchup, that's going to be a big factor. But I do think, and I'm saying this honestly, I do think McKiss's team through and through is very solid and the most solid in the league. And even though he does have some COVID issues, I think his team runs pretty deep. And I think that his 12-2 record, although a lot of those wins have been by very narrow margins, aka the week that he played Team Vanek, I think that he deserves to be 12-2, and I think that he is going to be crowned the World Nine's Best Fantasy Football Friends champion. So I'm going to give the crown to McKiss on this one.
All right. Well, Mike Vanek, thank you so much for being on the show this week. I'm wishing you all the best of luck with your picks, of course. Not as good as me, can't beat the expert, but thank you for being on, and look forward to having you back on the show next year.
Thanks, Danny Football. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, Danny Football and guest Mike Vanek, for those great picks. That is all we have for you this week. Be sure to come back next week to see how things shook out. We're going to have our 2021 season wrap-up video. I'm Danny Football, and this has been TNN.